Welcome to the very first episode, the intro episode of Forged in Silence podcast. Robbie and I decided that we would like to start the conversation in a podcast about men's mental health. So here we are, figuring this out together.
I just, as soon as I hit start, I told Steve he has to do the intro.
Yeah, so I got surprised.
That's how we're going to roll.
I don't know, I did
Everything's
pretty
going to be a
good.
surprise.
But
you did.
really, in the end, what's our intent here? We're here to address the struggles that men face but rarely talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there's a whole lot in there too. So.
Oh, yeah. When we first sat down and wanted to, it was kind of funny because I sent you a text message and I was like, hey, do you want to start a men's mental health podcast? Robbie and I have known each other for how long now? 2 years?
A little over 2 years, yeah. 2 years.
Yeah. And I sent you a text message and I was like, hey, do you want to start a men's mental health podcast? And you were like, yeah, I've been thinking about this exact same thing.
I was at the gym, and like when you have those daydreaming moments, and it was like something was missing, and a men's mental health podcast or men's podcast, like talking about the shit we go through as a man in this, society, just kept popping into my head. And when I saw that message from Steve, I was like, the universe is speaking. It's time to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I've never Googled or looked up any other men's mental health podcasts. This is not something that I have looked into, but when I go about my daily life, you know what I mean? There was a time where I never had any or felt like I had any sort of support, right? Like you don't ask for it because you feel weak enough that if I start asking for support, then I'm going to get judged for it. And then what happens there? Because then at that point in time, I'm too worried about what everybody else is going to think. So before I go down that rabbit hole, because that's one of the rabbit holes we can go down, some of the things that we're looking at trying to talk about are relationships, the dynamics there. What does that look like? Emotions, talking about emotions, feeling our emotions, what it's like to be vulnerable as a man to a woman and to another man, because those dynamics both are upbringings. What does a healthy man look like to us? What is your healthy version of a man? I don't really, if I think about this, what was the healthy version of a man that I could look up to and say, that's the kind of man that I want to be? You know what I mean? And emotional intelligence, emotional support, men need emotional support too. I don't care how much you deny that. If you're a guy listening right now, it sucks feeling alone. Masculinity, we've had this thing in society right now where things that are masculine just get emasculated. And so let's talk about it. What does that feel like? What does that look like in our lives? How do we combat that? Do we change the people in our lives? So another topic of conversation. Stereotyping, comparison, and asking for help. Still to this day, probably one of the most vulnerable things it was to ask for help. Quick story. Last night, I was overwhelmed with homework and editing a couple of podcasts and trying to manage the time that I had. I have a roommate and she's home right now, so she's going to hear this. Manage the time that I had. And I had said I'll make dinner, and I needed that hour and a half to study. And so while she was at work, I sent her a text message saying, hey, can you stop at the grocery store, pick up some meat that's fresh, whatever, and we can make some dinner when you get home. I said what I meant was, can you pick up some food? Can you make me dinner? Like that's what it, and I didn't say that at first. I said it afterwards because I needed help. So I said, I actually asked for help. I need your help here because I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling the pressure. I'm feeling this. As much as I would love to cook a meal and I'm home, you know what I mean? So why not? Because we share that sort of stuff. Uh, it's not too often I ask for help. That wasn't the easiest thing. And I mean, you think it's something simple like, hey, can you whip together some dinner after you've finished working 8 hours while I'm at home? It doesn't feel like it's, where did I manage my time wrong? That's the question. That's the thing that I ask myself. But anyways, that's some of the stuff that Robbie and I are gonna sit down 2 times a month, and whatever topic or life event or whatever it is that kind of comes up, we're going to pick a topic and just kind of go down that rabbit hole and share what our thoughts are on that. My
Yeah,
dog
and the
is, yeah,
asking for help part, our intent here is that if you're asking for help in silence, we can help you through that. We can give you some kind of substance to make you feel that you're okay and you're wanted and loved and you're worthy of living. There's a lot of, times where, Steve was talking about asking for help. We're going to kind of go down this rabbit hole because I think it's a good topic to kind of go with is, well, a lot of us were, brought up not to ask for help. The mother in the, relationship, mom, whatever, sister, would always go to the man for help for most physical things, financial things too. So, as a young boy, I couldn't ask for help. Like, I could ask mom for help with like some things, but I didn't feel, okay to go ask mom for help for masculine things that I felt were a duty of mine as being a boy, a man, whatever it was at that point in life to do. And I know a lot of men struggle with it, including myself. Like, I just hope that we can bring some stuff to the table to make you feel at ease and really to think about where you're at. And hopefully, we can give you some tools to learn how to be vulnerable. Steve and I both didn't get to where we are today without being vulnerable. And you want some tough stuff, sit down and have a conversation with another man about whatever it is that we're not supposed to talk about with each other. Even to, people in relationships and other stuff, we've been taught as men to not talk or share emotions.
Yeah, I think one of the other things we might talk about is conflict too, because I think we're part of the reasons why we don't share our emotions or share how we feel about certain things is not only the inner conflict there or inability to share, but if you run into a place where if you actually speak up and it creates conflict and you don't have someone that is willing or able or capable of working through the conflict, then you just end up, if you're like me, you end up feeling like the nice guy that finishes last. You feel like then it's your responsibility. And I don't know how many men are out there that feel like it's their responsibility after they create the conflict to then soothe that conflict over at the risk of abandoning yourself on the way to easing that distress.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I brought up what's bothering me. You didn't
Yep.
like it. You didn't like it. Now I feel like shit. Now I got to figure out how to
Fix
make
it.
us, yeah, fix it. That happens a lot, you know, I know in relationships, in my past relationships, that was, bring up how I'm feeling. If I dared to, I could, tell you most of the time I didn't because I didn't want the conflict. I didn't know how to have that conversation. And I was ashamed, really, that I would have to bring up something to downgrade myself as being a man, that my feelings were hurt or something wasn't right. Someone was being mean to me at work, whatever it is that we go through. But it's always hard for us men sometimes just to be able to have a voice.
And I'm talking about like not one that gets up and puffs its chest out and says, I am here raw, right? The bravado, the in your face type. I mean, those guys exist too. I'm talking about having an emotional, like a good, healthy response to whatever that is. Like I can stand behind my word. I believe in my word enough that regardless of what you say to me, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm going to take it as information, and I'm going to choose whether I'm going to show back up with compassion or not, whether I'm going to continue the conversation, or how I'm going to look at it.
Yeah. And, speaking from me, I was never taught that from my father.
No.
I was only taught one way, and that was yelling and screaming and violence.
It's the only way you could try and feel heard. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you
Yes.
screamed enough or got loud enough, maybe, just maybe, you would get your point across.
Yeah, or if you broke enough shit or put your fist through enough walls, that other person would listen.
I was never a violent kid. I was never a fist waller or a kicker I would get angry. I would raise my voice, but as far as I ever got.
Definitely learned that from my dad.
What? Wall punching?
Wall punching, breaking shit, definitely. Because I saw him do it. I always go back to that Dare video that they always, but I learned it from you, Dad, the whole drug thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of, we do pick up on what our parents are doing. And I thought that's how you healthily, I can't even say the word.
Healthy
express your anger. Healthily, that's not even a word, is it?
You can make one up, though. Just do it. Healthily.
Yeah. Expressing your anger was putting your fist to the wall.
Well, I mean, it's better than through someone's face.
Yes.
Or into it. Whatever.
But looking back, it's like, why did I have to get there for that person to listen?
Right.
I mean, it's a two-way street, right? It was always a two-way street, but it was like, why do we have to go to that extent sometimes for the other person to listen? And where's that breakdown in communication? I don't know.
No. And I mean, once again, one of the lessons that I've learned when you talk about the breakdown in communication, you need a willingness on both sides, right? If one side wants communication and the other side is essentially neglecting to have it, then you lose the willingness, which means you're not going to achieve any side, even an agreement to disagree. Two things can be true at the same time. We don't have to agree to exist and enjoy and be friends and whatever. I think the whole purpose of us even having this conversation when we sat down and said like, hey, let's start a podcast is we want to give a voice to the men. And I did some looking up. There's like 40% of men that don't even speak up, don't ask for help, don't anything. Like that is an enormous number. And I was in my economics class, and my economics teacher pulled up a chart, and it's U.S. Employed men, basically. And they have the same statistic for women. And he pulled up both of them. I saw this trend that went back to like the 1950s. And in the 1950s and 60s, employed men were up in the 85 percentages. Most men were employed and working. Women sat in the 60% range. There's a whole bunch of economic factors that go into why that is. And now, since the 1950s and 60s to 2025, that trend has been on a decline ever since that. Like it's never really spiked up. It's gone down from 85% to like 65%. So over the course of that 60 years or whatever it was, or 60 years, the employed man has gone down 20+%. Inflation's gone up. Oh, the percentage has, and the percentage has decreased. Same for women. Women were only in the 60% some odd percent range, that low range. It's only gone down a little bit to like 57%. But that's like a drop of 5%, 8% as opposed to men, which is like 20, 25%. When I saw that statistic, my eyes, what is going on? because it's clear it's not an individual thing. It's a society thing.
That's really interesting because, for the longest time, right, it was men, went to work. They, were the breadwinner of the household. The women didn't have rights to vote because they did not work. Men went to war. Men still go to war. Women go to war, but through the draft, I'm saying. So, when women started getting rights, it sounds like that's when it started to go down. And I almost wonder if that's when men started to lose their voice.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if it was the losing of the voice or, I mean, there's so many different kind of factors, losing their voice, the job market, I don't know. It's an interesting question to wonder what has happened over that period of time. You have economics, you have the jobs, you have this, you have the birth of social media and the internet in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all of these things, and like it never spiked up. It's just kind of interesting. Like, where's the money coming from?
Right. It's like, was that the top of our, revolution? Now we're steadily going back the other way. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
was that all we got from industrialization? Was to that point?
yeah, I mean, the 60s and 70s was boomer town, right? Baby, that's where all the baby boomers are, and they're leaving the workforce now. I mean, now here we are getting into like an economics conversation. It's kind of fun.
It just goes back to, there's a whole lot of shit that we all struggle with, but just as men, like two men talking about economics, about of going backwards, it's just interesting that
I'm sure you and I will get into talking about stuff that might be on the taboo side of things. It's probably going to happen. That's what happens when you and I start talking anyways.
yeah.
So for the people that are going to be listening to our new endeavor, tell our audience, our new audience, a little bit about you, Robbie.
So I am 46 years old. I'm in my late 40s now. I passed that mid 40 line last year, so late 40s. And now I'm living in Rapid City, South Dakota. I have a daughter that lives with me. She is 14 years old. That is kind of a new situation for me. I've been in her life since she was born. She lived with her mom up until last year. Her mom moved away. She moved in with me. So now I, figuring out how to be a full-time dad with a teenage daughter. I've, had a career in aviation, 20 plus years, that I decided that I no longer wanted to be a part of. Gave that up, and that's when I moved to Rapid City from Colorado. And when I did that, I decided that I didn't want that high pressure of a career anymore. And we, want to talk about taking some masculinity away from me. That was a huge thing. Like, my self-worth went in the shitter for a while because I worked this job. My ego was pumping me up, and it was cool. I mean, aviation's cool, but it wasn't cool to me anymore. The stress wasn't worth the money. I've always been the type of person where you can't put any money value on my time. And the older I got, I valued my time more and less about the money. And to come with that, there's been a lot of struggles. Rapid City, South Dakota in general is not known for high-paying jobs or, a lot of innovative career stuff here. It's a old mining, ranching state. There's less than a million people that live in this state. So I came from Front Range of Colorado, where there's, millions of people, to a state that has less than a million people. I became a personal trainer back in 2010. I worked at a college for a while as the adjunct instructor teaching the class. Then I became the gym manager. So that entailed running the gym on the campus, making sure it was staffed with students, faculty, students, and family members could come into the gym and get free personal training. It was just part of the thing. Then I started to help develop police academy programs, fire academy programs, where I would have to train the police and fire academy personal training because the state mandated so many hours of movement for these cadets. I started running that program. My goal was to become an in-house personal trainer. I was doing that for a while, but at that point, my daughter was just born and my ex wasn't working. I was, providing for my daughter, my ex, and her daughter at the time. We just bought a house because, the whole white picket fence, got to look cool.
The dream.
The dream, right? I wasn't feeling very cool with that because I was essentially working 4 jobs at the time. Then I got into this thing where I started running, and that was during the same time period. And, started running on trails, and I quickly found out that the races I was doing weren't ever quite long enough for me. So I kept exploring the distance and going farther and farther, which led me to what we call in the sport an ultra divorce. I got the divorce because of my running was taking precedence over family. And, there's a lot of substance abuse, trauma, childhood trauma in my past. And now I'm striving to be the best version of myself that I can be for, of course, myself first, then my daughter, and try to leave some kind of legacy for myself.
And that begins the story of how we met, because we met in a place where we both wanted to better ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I'll still never forget when you came to South Dakota and visited me, and we were forcing ourselves to go to bed because we could just sit up and talk all night. And
God, we were like 2 women who just couldn't shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, what time is it? Oh, it's only 11:30. And then you look at the clock again and you're like, oh shit, it's 1.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude, we should get to bed because we want to do stuff in the morning.
It was so funny too, because we just wake up, make some coffee, then we were right back where we were the night before.
Yeah. And go ahead.
That was a really, I've had a lot of light bulb moments, but that was one of those ones where it was like, I could never be vulnerable with my father than just us talking. And it was just talking. That's what it was. Like, of course, I've had conversations with a friend. The shit we were talking about was comforting and vulnerable and
real life shit.
Yeah, like a lot of shit I've never talked to another man about. I've talked to my mom about it, but of course she can't give me the same kind of feedback I'm not looking for, but I needed at that point. So that was the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, that was like, for me, that was very much the same, because I found myself being able to be more vulnerable with women than I could be with another man. And I'm sure there was my own fear of judgment that existed in there, but to actually have another conversation and to call up a buddy, there was nothing I ever had growing up to call up a buddy and be like, hey dude, I fucked up, or this is the stupid shit that I did. I need some help, or what's your opinion on this? And instead of it just being like flopped back in my face like a dirty fish and you feel guilty for it and everything else, it was, that's your problem. All right, tell me more about that. Let's see what we can figure out. And it's just weird. It was a cool and awesome experience. I think maybe I should talk about me a little bit. Hey?
Yeah. Let's hear about you, Steve.
All right. Well, you are the old guy in the group because I'm the young guy in the group. That's how that works.
Yep, I'm the old man.
I'm recently 43, so I've got a couple more years before I hit the downside of 40. I'm on the upside of 40 right now, which was good. I've got 2 girls. They live with their mom back in southwestern Ontario. I am living in Colorado right now. This past summer, I moved here and I decided to go back to school. I left a career of 19 plus years working in a high fructose corn syrup factory where we took corn and turned it into sugar, glucose, and fructose. So while I was there, I worked on the floor as an operator. That's where I started. That's what my education was. Then I got promoted. I became a supervisor, and then I got another promotion where I was basically in charge of half the operation of the facility. They called me refinery lead, and I remained in management, in some sort of management capacity, for the last 10 years that I spent there, and I burnt my ass out working there. And It felt like you could just never do enough. And anyways, corporate Canada, corporate America, American company in Canada. So generally the same set of values, not a place that I felt like I wanted to continue to be. And I fought with that for a really long time, about at least a couple of years. Geez, I probably said I wanted to 5 years before I actually found the courage to pull the trigger. Anyways, did that, took basically a year off, divorced, traveled, divorced before I quit, traveled, turned my truck into a little traveling camper thingy, homemade style, and traveled across the US, took up hiking, and eventually it was time for me to move to a place that, I love it here in Colorado, which I find is funny because you were here and now you're in South Dakota and now I'm in Colorado. So love this place, absolutely adore this place. I'm going back to school, majoring in business, probably going to change my major here to accounting. And yeah, I love hiking. I love getting outside. I'm a podcaster, somehow enjoy tedious stuff. I've discovered that if you give me tedium, I will destroy it nice and calmly. It must be something, it's calming for me. It just is. So yeah, and I'm fascinated with emotion, and I'm fascinated with figuring out how to express myself in a really healthy way. And I'm fascinated with trying to become a better man, not only just not for anybody else, but for me. Like, what does that look like? How do I get healthier? What does a good diet look like? And then because you have experience with that, we've had that conversation plenty of times. And in all of those aspects, I'm still kind of, in some ways, I'm searching for examples in my life in person, not social media, not these people that are experts in all of the things, but like in person. Who is this healthy example of the thing that the person, the man that I would like to become? And how do I put myself in that situation and get out of my goddamn comfort zone? But my 30s, even though I did that, are a blur. My 40s, I want them to be fairly epic, and it's been pretty epic for the last little while. Doing hard things is what I have to do. And doing hard things back in my 30s I did those in silence, and I don't want to do hard things in silence anymore. I think it's bullshit. Honestly, I think that whole stigma is bullshit, and that's literally why we're both here.
Yep. Yeah. You mentioned, 30s, and like I've done some stuff that people would say is hard, physically. That's just physical, mentally, and growing as a human being, being the best person we can be is fucking hard. It is so hard. Like, 'cause there's no book on how to do this. Like, we can sit and listen to other podcasts or read books and everyone tells you how you should do what they think is the right thing to do. It doesn't work for everyone. We're all different. And to sit through it, I spent good 30 plus years in silence, right? Just
30 plus years in silence or kicking and screaming and putting your fists through walls.
exactly. And I don't resent that, the way that my life has gone. I was thinking about this today. Like, I don't resent, I could say, well, I wish I would have done this stuff earlier. Well, if I would have done it earlier, I might not be the person who I am right now. And I have to be happy with the person I am right now, and I am. Because I've, put a lot of hard work in and will continue to do that hard work. And I like to tell people that, that hard work isn't going to stop till the day I die. And we've been programmed not to believe that, right? We've been programmed, retire, wake up, do whatever you want, sit on your front porch, whatever, right? At that point, I want to be emotionally free and be able to do everything and then some. I don't want to go, like we were talking about that economics, up and then down. I just want that roller coaster to keep going up, and that thrill of being higher and higher. That's a weird thing to say, but
coming from a recovered freaking pot addict and alcoholic, I know.
Yeah, that was the wrong word, but
No, it's
it's
fine. It's not the wrong word. You
it's
still got your point across.
it's the truth though, right? It's the
Yeah,
truth.
it is. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I may not use substances anymore, and I'm still trying to chase whatever that is. I don't know what it is. I do know what it is. But yeah, the hard
Chasing.
shit in growth.
You're chasing the better, next best version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I'm hearing you say.
and the cool thing about that is when we get to that version, we might go, that's not the version that I want. And I've already done this, So just keep on going. Like, I can't put a time limit or a end goal or whatever it may be on my growth. I've worked with and known a lot of people have done that, and they're miserable.
Yeah. And I think it's time that we stop as people overall being divisive over it. Like we become jealous, we become envious of these people that are doing better for themselves, that have what you want, that instead of asking them how did you get that out of curiosity, right? It comes from a place of lack instead of a place of it's taken me a good long time to figure out that I need to approach life with way more curiosity than what I did before. That curiosity just is a mind-opening experience.
Yeah, when you change that from jealousy to curiosity, you're like, how did that person get there? Instead of, being pissed off that they are there and whatever.
Yeah, I
When you
mean,
when you question that, right? That's when stuff starts happening. When you're jealous about it, then nothing's good with that emotion.
no, you're not going to do anything good with it. This is going
Yeah.
to make you feel worse.
Yeah, your self-worth's gonna go the other direction.
Comparing yourself to other men. I just joined a CrossFit gym. It's interesting. In the end of January, I joined a CrossFit gym, and then you show up, and it's co-ed, right? So like, there's men and women in there, and when you don't do this sort of thing, you show up and you suck, right? And you just have to accept the fact that you suck, and that's fine if you go into it with like that curiosity you're talking about. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to learn. And I'm going to go there. And I've dabbled in CrossFit so minimally that I didn't understand how sore my body was going to be until now, because it is. It feels great though. I mean, I didn't join it so I would have a leisurely jog where I could just quit when my body is like, no, dude, why? Like, you're exhausted. I want to know what that looks like and feels like when I'm out of breath and I need to push myself and I need to understand that. I really do want my 40s to be really successful 40s. I want to look back on my 40s and be like, dude, you put a lot of effort into that. Let's see what you can do here in your 50s. That's where I'm at with it. And I'm still learning, and I'm still pissing away time, and I'm still doing those sort of things less and less, caring for myself more and more. What does that look like? What does that look like? And I think figuring that out is a journey all on its own. Having support, like good support. There's a Brene Brown reel. I'm going to post that. It's going to be one of the first things that I post on our IG account, and I've saved it. And she talks about how she was studying women, and a man turned around to her and said, isn't that great? Like, why haven't you, I mean, that's handy, right? Why did you avoid the other side completely? So she looked into it, and like, he said some really cool stuff that if I was to regurgitate, I would butcher. So that's why I'm going to put it on our Instagram page. And so I think we could probably, I don't know, wrap this up. It's a 41-minute episode. I'm not surprised that you and I spoke this long. But we have an Instagram account that's Forged in Silence Podcast, at Forged in Silence Podcast. We're going to be here once every 2 weeks. We're going to try and release another episode, and we're just going to dive into this and see where this takes us.
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch the video if you're that type of people that like to watch two people talking. I don't know. Some people like that. I'm super excited though. I just, I have another podcast too, and it's, endurance based with, our thing is, letting everyone tell their story. And that's awesome. It's, opened some doors. But here with this one, like I was saying, the intent before is to hopefully open up some doors for some men to talk, because I know myself has found so much value. It's a life changer. I can just say it's a life changer, and I just hope we can do that for some other men.
Yeah, I mean, suffering in silence is horrible, and both you and I have experience with it. And talking about it was my path to figuring out my way out. Like you don't have to. If you're a guy right now and you're like, I can't speak to anyone, there's other guys out there that are willing to listen. They're harder to find than they're not as hard to find as you think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's the right way to say that.
Yeah.
They're not as hard to find as what you think. And if you need to reach out, you can reach out to us on our Instagram account. One of us will be there. I'm started checking it a little bit more frequently. We have 2 followers, so we're doing awesome.
Yeah. Or moms?
No, not yet. Anyways,
Okay. I already think my mom knows about this. So
does your mom think you're cool too?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I know, mine too. Oh, man. All right, Robbie. I'm looking forward to this little endeavor, and also, I guess to let our listeners know, it's not just going to be us two every once in a while. I think we're going to invite a friend to join the conversation if they have a topic that we're interested in talking about. It's not going to be an interview style. We're just going to have a conversation, all 3 of us or 4 of us, or if there's, I don't know. It's going to be fairly open. We'll see where it goes. Thank you. If you've made it this far, thank you for making it this far, and I look forward to, I guess I won't see, I was going to say see you again, but I'm like, whoever's watching this, I can't see them, so that's a horrible way to end this. But anyways.
We could see you. He's lying, but thank you.